We can just keep chatting.
Yeah, let's chat a little more
and slide over a bit. I don't know if we can spend a couple minutes on the Bauhaus Earth hub concept that you were talking about, because that's something that's really close to our heart with working in regions and communities that need development, the need... come on in, Philip. Do you need to go?
A couple more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure. I was just getting into the hub concept, and why don't you just introduce yourself? So we've got you on camera here, Philip.
Yeah. Well, I'm Philipp Misselwitz. I'm an architect, also an urban planner, and recently joined the Bauhaus Earth initiative as an executive director, working with colleagues like Alan and the climate scientist John Schallnhuber, and really as a startup, and we are really committed to somehow linking worlds which don't speak to each other enough. Now I think the urban community and development cooperation in the urban field, which we feel is really delinked from climate science and the whole discussion that takes place in other bubbles around sustainable materials and the work you're doing, Scott. So we see us as a kind of connector and a platform to be able to show how transitioning towards a decarbonized and also just world can take place across different scales, from the material to building neighborhood scales towards sustainable regenerative regions. So these bridging scales, I think, is something that doesn't really happen enough. And I know this as an architect, and
this is really what's driven me here is that challenge of bringing people together across disciplines and across geographies. So
so I think we need to really sort of join forces and not just talk in occasions like COP, but really join forces implementing projects. So one of our ambitions is really to set up 10 sort of projects which we would like to help the company and boost a network maybe for the duration of 5 to 10 years that really show how a switch in the building sector, meaning all the elements and scales that are involved in the building sector towards sustainability is possible.
And that's both the larger system sort of boundary that you've been talking about, and that's the hub that I think we were just going to get into a little bit more, which is moving that concept today into regions that are looking for development opportunities, but also maybe have particular ecological, high ecological value. At least this is where the Cities4Forests model comes in, is partnering between urban areas and areas that have that high ecological value, forests in particular.
Yes.
So we were talking about, say, regions in Latin America, for example, or in Africa. Is there one in particular or any examples that you might refer to as just a concept right now to flesh out that hub idea?
Well, we haven't mentioned Indonesia, and particularly the forests of Indonesia, which is also an important biological set of resources and ecology ecosystems. And our great colleague Arif Rabik, who's here as part of the Kantigan Mentaya project and the Thousand Bamboo Village project, is looking very much at how they manage a 500,000 hectare concession in Kalimantan. They're looking at how to use the wood coming out of that sustainably managed and carefully measured forest concession can produce housing for communities, and how those communities not only will receive the housing but learn how to make the housing based on the systems that are being developed. So that's a perfect example of a potential X lab of ours that we would have partner relationships. We get a huge amount of information coming out on the carbon levels in the forests, the range of biodiversity that is produced because of the way that the forest is managed, how many units of housing they can produce, how the communities are doing as a socioeconomic system, and we bring that back in the same way that Matt's work here has shown that a homegrown economy can exist and produce housing for Scotland. So I think we could imagine, as Philip said, 10 partners who will develop the systems and then produce the demonstration projects that show the breadth of thinking that it's reflected, the durability of those products, both in the single life cycle of a building and future life cycles of buildings and other consumer products that might use the materials that come out of it. And we want to monitor that, and we want to demonstrate that to the world, because we think that can transform the built environment.
Absolutely. Well, we're really thrilled to be working with you guys, to be learning from you, hopefully contributing in a number of ways.
Definitely learning from you.
The partner forest communities that we're building relationships with, we're saying there's about 25 or 30 that we have now established some relationships with, all of which would be, eventually potentially candidates for this kind of work. And they all have similar challenges, and these are the challenges that they're talking about in COP really right now in the Blue Zone. We were thrilled to hear about commitments to forests. Of course, how that's implemented is one of the challenges which this could help address. How money gets spent to help conserve forests, support communities, support young people. That's another theme that I think your work will be very attractive to young people looking for opportunities for innovation.
I think the really thorny question is how to link the right to development, which has been articulated to by many leaders here, and is also by many NGOs and civil rights organizations, is really at the heart of making the world a more just and an equal place, closing income gaps and also wealth gaps between countries, and how to connect that right to development with really our urgent need to switch our economic basis, particularly in the building sector, towards sustainability. So they shouldn't be mutually exclusive. We have to find ways of allowing people to build in developing countries who need houses, who need to improve their living conditions, and we cannot sit on a high horse in the North Atlantic and demand those development projects to not take place. We have to steer them in the right direction. And we noticed already that the kind of controversies emerge around the kind of forestation commitments in certain countries, backtracking. This is really around this kind of very thorny issue.
Yeah, not easy solutions necessarily, because we have hundreds of years of track record of exploitation that's been driving the economy, and now we're having to turn quite quickly. But that's really what Bauhaus Earth is set up to try to do, right? Is to provide, I guess, incentives, guidance. How would you describe the kinds of resources that would be channeled to these places that need?
Well, we want to collect and disseminate simultaneously. So we're looking obviously for funding for our own initiatives so that we can support others and direct our partner labs or hubs to funders who are interested in these topics but need to learn more about what's happening on the ground. And so we see ourselves as very much on the ground, as well as operating in the science world at a high level of research. But as a colleague said, research is a fundamental right, not something that just a select few get to do, and that information that comes out of it is really important. So I think, without trying to wrap up the concept, because it's a very sort of fluid and open one, I think that we're seeking relationships with where the resources exist to support these sort of more indigenous, I would say, explorations, and at the same time feed that information back as valid research to the kinds of think tanks and non-governmental organizations and philanthropic institutions that might further support those things.
So that equitability is both in the and at an economic level, but also at a knowledge and
acquisition,
knowledge creation level.
Yeah. And I think this kind of narrative of transitioning towards a bio-based building sector is emerging in certain countries, but it's not really a global narrative yet. And so it needs to be somehow complicated and also provincialized and localized without, obviously overcomplicating it, and also showing that it is possible, but we need really this polyphony of different voices and actors to network together to tell that story. So I think agenda, that is still not as high enough in the on political agendas and in the political space as we would like it to be. I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah.
It's been a struggle that over the last years that has made some progress, but I think the true implications of that argument are really not there yet and understood yet. And I think that in the context of an unraveling and accelerating climate crisis, I think huge amounts of financial transactions will go from the north to the south, and I think the building sector should really be one of the main beneficiaries of these transactions, because it needs help, and we are responsible for this climate crisis, and we are responsible for channeling these funds to help these transitioning efforts.
Well, we really hope Cities4Forests can be part of helping that happen. The Partner Forest program is set up to make those kinds of connections. There's a lot of wealth in the cities of the world, and our goal is to help channel that to basically, the survival of these cities is dependent on getting this right.
Yeah.
So there's an incentive at a very practical level to work on the climate together, but also to create mutually beneficial relationships. So we'll work together. I think that the main outcome of just this meeting is the magnetic pull of groups, great people coming together, being pulled in the same direction, and let's figure out how to work together on this.
Sounds great.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I know you guys have to get going, right?
Yeah.
So thanks for coming out here.
Backing off.
Thank you so much.
Just a little taste, but it really